Hello, everyone. Welcome to our special education legal clinic. Let's see. I see we have a couple attendees in here. I know we're behind actually. I would say I'll give it a minute for everybody to join, but since we're already behind and I know that Tammy has a lot to talk about today, we will get started. And hopefully you guys know already that these will be recorded. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special education legal clinic. My name is Renee Stromsky, and I am a special education attorney with the law firm Abdenauer Weicker. This special education legal clinic is a collaboration between our firm, the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities, and Disability Rights Ohio. For the past couple of years during the school year, we've hosted free monthly workshops on different special education and related legal topics, followed by free individual guidance sessions for families. And today is our final workshop of the 2025-26 school year series. And we are excited to have Tammy Sebastian, one of the special education advocates with Disability Rights Ohio, presenting on special education myths versus facts. Before we get started, I just want to thank everyone who has joined us throughout this school year of presentations. If you missed any of our previous workshops, all 8 of the prior sessions we've had are available on our website, and I'll drop the link to that again in the chat after I finish. And this recording will be posted later this week. And then hopefully you guys will keep an eye out for information on our 2026-27 school year series, which will be announced later this summer. And then really quick, I also just wanted to take a moment to share information about Abdenor Weiker's annual Student Rights Conference, which is being held this year on Thursday, July 16th and Friday, July 17th. It is entirely virtual and it's designed for literally anyone from parents to students to educators, advocates, attorneys. And there's all different types of sessions, including case law, recent special education case law updates, um, how to make sure students are have a voice in their IEPs and 504 plans, post-secondary transition, interpreting ETRs for our IEPs and different advocacy strategies. And registration for that is currently open. And we do have the early bird pricing available through July 1st, so through the next 2 weeks. And we also do have discounted rates for our nonprofit partners and a limited number of need-based scholarships available. So I'll drop that link also in the chat here in a few minutes. But back to our presentation, of course, there is a Q&A feature available in Zoom, so please feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation. I'll be monitoring those and helping facilitate the questions. And then if there's time at the end, Tammy will take the questions that I'm not able to answer. So with that, I will turn it on over to Tammy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Renee, and I'm very excited. I just registered for the conference in July, so very excited. Attended last year. Tons of great information. Highly
Yay.
encourage everybody to attend. So I am Tammy Sebastian. I am a special education advocate at Disability Rights Ohio. So good afternoon in what I believe is fall in Ohio right now. It feels like fall anyways. I don't, depending on where you are in Northeast Ohio, it's definitely cooler. Thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, though, I just kind of want to get a sense of who's joining us today. But I'm going to ask a quick question. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and share it in the chat. But how many of you have searched Google, AI, joined a Facebook group, or just talked to another parent, educator, and came up with 5 completely different answers? So go ahead. I think it's our Q&A. I'm not sure if our chat's running, but go ahead and tell us if that's happened to you, because really that's one of the biggest challenges we face in special education. So it's really not that there's not enough information out there. It's really, is it accurate and does it apply to every situation? So one thing that I've really learned over the years, working with families and schools is that there are very few absolutes in special education. It's really, we don't have schools always have to, parents can never. I usually say, well, it depends, right? And that's because special education is individualized. So, we're going to go and look at some of the statements we hear from time to time. And then Renee said, we can take some questions at the end. So,
And
oh,
I will say, Tammy, there were some yeses and absolutelys to what you were saying. Yes, that definitely
awesome. That
resonates with our attendees.
I believed that was the case, but I cannot advance my slide. Well, oh, I apologize. There we go. Okay. So, again, thank you all for being here today. Um, so I really don't want to overwhelm you with like legal jargon. I'm just really giving you practical information. This might be basics for some it might not be. So I'm going to start with myth number one. And I believe Renee is going to be sharing also a link with some resources once we get to the facts. So, myth number one, a diagnosis automatically means a student receives an IEP. Hmm. So,
Does anyone
yeah,
want to drop whether they think it's a myth or a fact
yeah,
in the
that's a great,
Q&A?
yeah,
I was gonna say we don't have the chat, unfortunately.
yeah, that's good if they want to do that. So, if you think that's a myth or a fact,
I'm seeing myth as
myth.
what's coming in right now.
Well, good. We got a lot of people that are know what they're talking about. So it is a myth. So a diagnosis alone does not qualify a student for special education. So under IDEA, the student must have a disability and the need for specially designed instruction. I would have to say, though, this is one of the biggest misconceptions that we hear at Disability Rights Ohio. It's important. So we talk about a medical diagnosis is definitely important and should be considered by the school team, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. So a doctor determines whether a child has a medical condition or a diagnosis. The school team is really determining whether that disability impacts the student's education to the point that they need specially designed instruction. So that is, again,
Excuse me.
oh, go ahead, Renee. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot I was off mute. I was just coughing and I said,
Oh,
excuse
no.
me.
Okay,
Sorry.
you're okay. No, you're okay. So we we really see this a lot. So two students could both have the same diagnosis and have very different educational needs. Um, one student may be successful with very few accommodations, may need a 504 and not an IEP, while another may need specially designed instruction. So again, a diagnosis opens the door to consideration, but it doesn't automatically open the door to eligibility. So it starts the conversation, but really, again, eligibility is determined on that educational impact. So that is myth number one. So, myth number two, a student does not need special education if they have passing grades. I'm going to give it a pause, see if anybody responds. And I can't see anything, Renee. So,
Let's see. Two people or three have said myth.
yes. So that is definitely a myth. So grades are, again, only one piece of the puzzle. Um, so a child can have passing grades and still need specially designed instruction. That could include behavior, communication, social skills, executive functioning, or other disability related needs. So, you know, a lot of times, uh, we talk about educational performance is much broader than academics. And I like to say it's educational impact, not academic impact. So, we're looking at all of those different things that could impact a child's education. A student could have average or above average grades and still have significant disability related needs. So the real question isn't are they passing? It's is the disability creating barriers that require specialized support? So we really need to look at that. I again, IDEA talks about not using one criterion when we're looking at whether or not a child needs specially designed instruction in order to learn. And a lot of times I'm working with families where, um, you know, when they're requesting an evaluation, or if the school district has sent a prior written notice and stated that they don't suspect a disability under IDA, a lot of times families are like, well, my child has a diagnosis, but they said in the prior written notice that they don't have, that their grades are fine. And so that's when we have that deeper conversation about what is it that is actually impacting their education. And I usually try to prepare parents for that when they're looking at whether or not the student needs specially designed instruction in order to learn. So we're going to go to myth 3. Special education is a place. Hmm. I think the giveaway here is that we're saying myth versus facts. So they, they might get all of these right. Um,
I was
so
I was gonna say we have some people saying myth, and we also had a comment from the last slide. I
okay. Yeah,
apologize, I just saw it.
we can take that
Uh,
because we're going through these pretty fast. So if you want to, Renee, if there's questions, we can.
it's just a comment from Jenna Wells with I think it's parent to parent or family to family. Oftentimes I hear parents say that their child doesn't fail due to them being involved in supporting them intensely at home, and then their child doesn't receive services because the child's not failing because they had to help. And I'm sure you see, I definitely see that a lot, and I'm sure you do too. And then the other answers were myths.
Yes, and we definitely do that. And thank you, Jenna, for sharing that because that actually is something we hear a lot. Um, Unfortunately, and sometimes outside tutoring, but the district can only and I would never tell a parent not to support their child, right? But if they are not seeing that impact, and a lot of times I would document. So if you're spending a lot, just as a little tip, if you're spending a lot of time supporting your child outside of school, whether that be tutoring or homework, document the amount of time that you're spending on homework. Homework is not supposed to be taking an hour to 2 hours a night. That would definitely show that, they're doing a lot of that work at home with them. So document that, share that with the school team. So yeah, we hear that a lot. Thank you for sharing that, Jenna. So our next slide was myth, special education is a place. So actually, it is not a place, it's a service, not a location. So services can be provided when we talk about the continuum, it could be provided in general education classrooms, resource rooms, community settings, or other environments based on student needs. So first, the IEP team has to determine what supports and services a student needs first, and then they decide where those services can best be provided. So we don't pick a place and then try to fit the services into it. Um, the goal is always to educate students in their least restrictive environment alongside their peers to the maximum extent appropriate. So we have a lot of conversations in special educations about least restrictive environment, placement. So this really is one of the biggest, I hear this a lot. We're understanding, that special education is not a place. It is actually a service. And again, um, these might be things that are, if you're an educator that, are common to you. However, I've heard this myth in both places, school and families. Is there anything in the chat, Renee? I'll just stop
Uh,
at each slide.
Not right now, no.
Okay. Okay. So, all students with disabilities receive transportation. So,
We have
fact,
guesses that it's a myth.
it is a myth. It's definitely a myth, but you would be shockingly surprised, um, where, again, families and districts believe if their student is on an IEP or has a disability, that their child receives transportation. So um, they they believe it's automatic just because there's an IEP. It's considered a related service, just like OT, PT, speech. So it's only provided if it's determined that the child needs that to benefit from special education. So it is determined on a case by case basis. Some students may need accommodations, like a specialized bus or a bus aid, curb to curb. Um, Others may ride the regular bus and not need any accommodation. So, just like every other part of the IEP, it's determined on a case by case basis. And also, I've provided some resources around that. I would say transportation is probably one of the biggest, especially at the start of a school year. I would say for the first 3 months of the school year, I am inundated with questions and concerns about transportation. And that's really not just in one district. It is across the state of Ohio. Transportation is a big concern. So, and lots of myths and not facts out there regarding transportation. And I also shared with Renee, we'd like to probably do another myth versus facts starting next school year, and get a little bit deeper into, because honestly, this presentation could go on for a long time. So we will go to kind of right in the same um, uh, going along with the theme of transportation. Students with IEPs must ride a special bus, which, if you were listening, we kind of dug into that a little bit. Um, so many students with IEPs ride regular transportation. So, like we said before, specialized transportation is provided only when necessary. Again, it is on, we're looking at whether or not, they need accommodations. Do they need curb to curb transportation? So, and it is determined every time annually, every time um, we are looking at that IEP annually, determining whether or not it's necessary for them to access their education. And this now is I would have to say, used to be just Google. So now, if AI or Google says it, it must be correct. I'm wondering if we'll get a lot.
I hope we get some answers for this one.
Fact: online information can be incomplete, outdated, inaccurate. Always verify the information using, oh, I have a typo in there. I apologize, everybody. Please don't look. Um, it's not an idea, it's IDEA. I apologize. Information using IDEA, state regulations, district policies, and reliable sources. And I am actually, Renee will be sharing a link. I really encourage you. I provided a resource. Cadre came out with a resource, the Center for Dispute Resolution, and it's a resource for parents on the use of AI. There has definitely been a huge uptick in families using AI to write state complaints, um, to fill out intake requests, which this is again, AI can definitely, I'm not shutting down AI or Google, definitely a great tool. But I really encourage parents to not use AI to be their only source. If you're using AI, tell them to, you can tell AI to definitely cite their sources and then go dig deeper into that. A lot of times, Google and AI does not have state specific information in there. And it really, there, a lot of times it can be outdated, or it's too generalized. I'm trying to think of what else. And also, it really depends on the student's circumstances. So, again, it's going to give you that generalized information. Certain AI search engines have bias. So, it's going to tell you what you want to hear. So, you have to be really, really, really careful in using AI. And another thing I encourage families, again, you can use it as a tool. Double check everything, double check it with the law, and be careful when you're sending that information. If you're using AI to send a letter to the school, because it can come off sounding very, not personal. So if, it could start damaging the relationship between you and the school. There's just, there's many things now that we're coming out, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more with the use of AI. I mean, we've had Google, but now I think even Google uses the AI search engine too. I think you can turn it off or you don't have to use it if you don't want to, but always, always, always double check it with the law. I can't say that enough. Any responses on that or
Yeah, there's no
questions?
responses in the chat or questions yet, but I will just back you up and reiterate everything you're saying. Um, it's really, if AI says it, is not necessarily correct. And yes, it can be helpful in maybe helping you find the right direction for something or getting some ideas. But again, like Tammy said, double check your sources and again, don't always trust it.
Yes, yes. And I think I just recently saw the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, the Office for Exceptional Children. If you go to the state complaint page, or it might be the dispute resolution page, they've actually put a blurb there about using AI to write state complaints. So you don't want to write a state complaint and then it's not sufficient. So again, double check all those resources. And I'm sure there's going to be, like I said, as AI, it's not going away. We're going to learn more and more and have more resources around it. This is really a big one. They all are, but I would say this is up there. If a student qualifies for ESY once, they will continue to qualify. And once again, it's determined on an annual. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Renee.
Sorry, we've got some myths
Yeah.
and some nopes.
Yeah. Yeah. But really, like I said, to some people who are on here, they might be like, oh no, uh, these are actually like we really took a look at how many of these cases come in and the amount that we spend answering these questions, and it really is a big one, where parents believe like, well, my child's qualified for ESY, why are they not qualifying this year? So again, it's looked at every year. So they look at current data. So, from year to year, that could change. It could not change. So you're really supposed to look at that every year. Um, and it just really, they can't deny it because it's never been done either. So it goes right. So just because you never qualified for ESY or your child never is qualified for ESY doesn't mean they won't. It really, they have to look at factors such as recoupment, regression, emergent skills, any other data that is identified by the IEP team. When if we have an IEP meeting at the beginning of the year and they say nope, doesn't need ESY, you probably want to say let's come back and look, let's collect some data to see, because we don't necessarily know that at the beginning of the year. So again, the key takeaway here, it's not permanent, it's not automatic, it's annual, and it's really individualized. And it's another, I probably could have put this as another one with this, but another myth that goes along with ESY is that it's only for children with under certain disability categories, right? And this, I've seen this myth run wild in districts, believing that only children with intellectual disabilities qualify for ESY or only children in this category. Every disability category, it doesn't matter. It's individualized, and it's based on that child's need. Huge. This is huge too. I'm saying that with every single one of them, but we see this a lot. So my child can stay in school until age 22 because they have an IEP. So while there is a provision, it's still determined again annually, right? So we're looking at whether or not that does that child need that? And so eligibility ends when a student graduates with a regular diploma or reaches the state's age limit for special education services. So it has a little truth behind this, um, because many students with IEPs can stay in school longer, but it's not just because they have an IEP, right? So if a student earns a regular high school diploma, IDEA eligibility generally ends. That's why we talk a lot about, and I think we've actually had presentations on here about deferred graduation and what that looks like. So a lot of times we're coming to IEP meetings and the parents are like, oh, oh my God, my kid's already, and this is something I really, really, really encourage families to look at if you have a transition aged youth is, um, how are they earning their credits? Because a lot of times we get there and they're like, oh, they earned all their credits. It's time to go. They're going to graduate. And it's like, okay, so along the way, find out how your child is earning those credits, how many credits they have. There's also a targeted date for graduation on an IEP. Take a look at that, have those conversations if that targeted date is on there. And a lot of times, even though a student may have received the credits they need to graduate, they don't necessarily, or they have not necessarily met their goals. And then that's where we look at whether or not it kind of turns into like functional goals, right? So we're not working on those credits and the academics, but those functional goals. So that is, again, this is really one slide, but there can be an entire presentation when we're talking about transition and deferred graduation and whether or not, and again, individualize based on what that student may need. So have those conversations as early as possible, continue to have those conversations. And then filing for due process is the best way to resolve disputes. I'm interested if anybody thinks that's the best way.
Anyone have any thoughts on, if we're going to, if you need to resolve a dispute, should we file due process? Is that the best way to go? We have no way. Um,
This is
um,
funny.
we have myth, work it out at the table first, then mediation or state complaint. Um, so it's looking like we're thinking it's a myth.
Yeah. So it is. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be a good way to, we're not saying that. We're not saying it can't be a good way to resolve a dispute. However, it's one dispute resolution option. We get through so many disputes or disagreements through communication. So somebody said, yeah, try to work it out at the table, facilitated IEP meetings, mediation, or state complaints. However, there's no, you don't have to go through all of those to do that. However, it really can be resolved with a good communication, good collaboration. It really depends on the concern. Facilitated IEP meetings, mediation, state complaints, and sometimes it could be an Office for Civil Rights complaint. Um, so one of the things you know we need to talk about is due process is, I mean, it can be very time consuming, very time consuming. I shouldn't say can be, it is, and emotionally draining. And that really takes a toll. It often requires significant preparation. It can take months to resolve. It could take several months, years, maybe. It could it could go into that. Collaborative approaches really can sometimes preserve those positive relationships and still address those concerns. I really encourage families to look at all their options before deciding which path is right for them. I go over all of those dispute resolution. I think I also included in a link. The Ohio Department of Education and Workforce actually has an entire page of all your dispute resolution options. Um, it goes through all of those. You can reach out to your state parent training information center, which is the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities. And whoever's in your area, they can walk you through each one of those areas. Again, I do it very often with families, and then we talk about what fits their needs. And sometimes it's not a facilitated IEP. Sometimes they need mediation. Again, um, there's no one, like, this is everything you'd want to go to mediation. This is everything that you would want to go. It really is based on individual needs. And like I said in the beginning, to come back to, I know I've said this in almost every slide, but that's why it's individualized. That's why we call it individualized, because it is. Um, so myth number 10, the
And
school's
Tammy,
evaluate. Oh, go ahead. I'm
sorry
sorry.
to interrupt you. There was just a question that I wanted to highlight really quick, and it was someone had just asked, is the due process and the dispute resolution um, options, is that for trying to get your child into a school designed just for special needs? And to answer that question, yeah, and like just to quickly answer it for Tammy, and you can
Thank
disagree,
you.
but yes, it is for trying to it's for any dispute you have with the school. So if you disagree with something, if you think they need to if you think your child needs to go to a school designed for students with special needs, then that would be the dispute resolution. All the links should all be in the chat right now as well. But we can certainly send them via email. Because Tammy, do you mind if I share the Word
Oh,
document?
no, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Yes.
we'll have everyone will go ahead and receive the links afterwards.
Yeah, Renee, and thank you very much. But yes, definitely. That is definitely anything you can use. And I would really encourage you to take some time and go on Ohio Department of Education and Workforce's website. And you can just Google dispute resolution Ohio, and it's typically the first thing that comes up. A lot of good information there. So um, we are now to the school's evaluation is final. So is it final? Hmm. Well, a parent who disagrees with an evaluation has the right to request an independent educational evaluation. I will say this. So there is a lot to be said about this. So uh, after the district and I would say there's a lot of confusion around when is an appropriate time to have an independent educational evaluation. The school district has had so a school district has to have done an evaluation, right? And then you would have had to disagree with that evaluation, and then you receive the independent educational evaluation. There is a lot of confusion. I've worked with families where they believe that they could get that independent before an evaluation has been done by the district. Now, you can get a private evaluation at any time and present that to the district, to the school. However, that is not an independent educational evaluation. And so when you disagree, typically and there's, like I said, a couple of these slides that we're doing, we could have a whole presentation on. So I'll briefly tell you with the independent evaluation, I always tell families it may take several months, just depending on where you're going to get the independent evaluation from. And when you come back, the school district only has to consider the results. And that's really where it takes a lot of advocacy and good advocacy skills with that independent evaluation when you come back to discuss the findings of the IEE. The district also will give you a list. You don't have to go by the list. It is just a recommended list. They have to provide that. And a lot of times, like I said, I cover the entire state of Ohio. So different areas in Ohio, some have tons of resources that do independent educational evaluations. Some really struggle with finding those. So doing your research, finding out, and also, in the area of need, do you have the right evaluator for that? So is there any, I thought I seen something in the chat, but it just could be.
Yeah, just someone had said that they've worked with families in rural areas who tried to get an IEE, but the school refused to pay for the IEE because it was over the budget that the school board had allowed for.
Yeah. So that, and Renee, you've probably seen that as well. So I also encourage families to look at their policies as well on IEEs. So each school district does have their policies on, I think there could be like mileage in there too. There's caps on them. And I don't want to get too much into what that says. And you know, Renee might want to speak more on that when it comes to what they can do according to IDEA, but I don't really think it gets very specific about caps and mileage in there. So I really encourage the families to look at the school's policy or ask for the school's policy on independent educational evaluations. But I've heard that before as well.
Yeah, it's I think the real problem is there's no there's nothing in the IDEA that says that a school district has to give X amount of dollars or like a percentage of whatever. And so there are districts that, the more rural districts have less money. So but these evaluation costs keep going up and up. And it's not matching. So that's more, that's a problem with the economy. It's just an economic problem, really, but it's obviously affecting our kids.
Yes, right up there with groceries and gas, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So thank you, Renee. Yes. So next, this is very, very, very big myth. We don't have the staff for that. comes up a lot. So, unfortunately, staffing shortages do not eliminate a district's obligation to provide a free and appropriate public education. Um, so, we've seen, and this has been going on for some time, but our staff shortages are really a real problem. Our related services. So I always encourage, first of all, they still have to provide the service, especially um, if you've already determined that the service needs to be provided. And I tell families, staff shortages are real, and that's something, but the school district should really be doing everything, and the family working together to try to come up with solutions for that. Whether that be, working on a plan during the staff shortage, regarding, I'm sorry, not regarding, depending on what that staff shortage is there, work on a plan for compensatory time if there's going to be an amount of time that they're not receiving those services. Can they contract out? So there are a lot of things. Have the discussions. Don't just leave it at, okay, well, we don't have the staff, and the parents saying, okay, well, they don't have the staff. It's still a requirement under IDEA, but this is where collaboration and communication really, really, really are necessary to come together to try to look for a solution. And again, if there's any missed time, I would definitely have a plan in place with the district to provide um, compensatory time if it's needed. So we have to try this before we can consider anything else. No. The IEP team must consider all relevant data and options. There is no requirement to fail repeatedly before considering appropriate supports or services. This also goes with response to intervention, and that is clearly stated in under IDEA that they cannot use um, responding to interventions as a reason to delay an evaluation. I hear this so many times, that, oh, we're going to do this first. We're going to wait to see if they progress. So again, it comes back to whether or not they believe that there is an educational impact. And you really have to look at everything. Um, so many times, they tell that, that we will hear the families are told, well, we have to do RTI first, or we have to, provide these accommodations first, or we have to see if a 504 works first. None of those are true. So they really have to look at everything, and the child does not have to go through those, you know, through those interventions in order to receive support. I also say that's fine. You can provide interventions, but at the same time, you can also be doing an evaluation if there's a suspected disability under IDEA. Big one. Another big one. I know I keep saying that, but it is huge. An emergency removal is not a suspension. This one is interesting. I'm not sure if everybody would know, but it can count as a disciplinary removal depending on the circumstances and really should be carefully documented and tracked. I also provided a link regarding emergency removals, and an emergency removal is not a suspension. So an emergency removal is just that. This is what I tell families. You shouldn't be emergency removing every day. We need to get to um, the core of the issue. So, um, also, I tell parents if they're being emergency removed, you want documentation of that. Um, you know, and again, it should not be a pattern of behavior. If you are being called to pick up your child from school on a daily basis or not, weekly, 2, 3 times, there's no amount. But if a pattern of behavior is occurring, I've also heard that, the parents get called on the phone to talk to the child. I always share with the parent, you are not the intervention. And what is that? So when we're trying to build independence, um, that what does that look like for the child and the student? Um, because now we're creating, first of all, another learned behavior. Also, that the parent is ultimately becoming the intervention. So make sure you document any emergency removals with the school team, even if it's just a follow-up email. And then you have documentation that those occur. So if that is missed instruction time too, that's where we're talking about it can count as a disciplinary removal. And if we're looking at whether or not that counts towards whether or not that child needs their disciplinary procedural safeguards, it's very important. Um, so we talked about this in the beginning. If a student is in general education, they cannot receive IEP services. And we talked about the continuum, right? So many students receive special education services while spending most or all of their time or their day in general education. There's really not too much more to say about that, except for when we're talking about least restrictive environment. And ultimately, children, students with disabilities, just like any other student, is a student of the general education curriculum first. And then we're looking at what those supports are needed, what kind of supports. And we're looking at that gen ed classroom first, right? And we're looking to see how supported they can be in there and what that least restrictive environment looks like. Um, this is a this is a really big one. I'd like to get some feedback on this. So, children cannot attend school if they are not potty trained. What are your thoughts on that?
Let's see, we've got some coming in. I'll wait until a couple more
Yeah.
come in so far. Anyone think can a school deny a child if they're not potty trained? Okay, mostly saying myth right now.
Oh, good. We got a really great team today of people on here. So that cannot be used to deny services. But you would not believe um, how many times that we hear that they can't or they can have goals towards that. So that is also something that um, I've also shared. There is a document, and it's a so I really highly encourage you to look at this document that I shared in Myth. I think it's Myth 15 there I believe it was I can't there was a collaboration document. There is actually uh, uh it talks about what school districts have to do, but also it has a plan. There is a template for a plan on there, I believe. So I really highly encourage you, if you know a family that needs this, or if you are a family that needs this, it is a really great resource. But again, no, they cannot say your child cannot come to school if they're not potty trained. And oh, I know we're getting close on time. Okay. So myth, this is a big one too. A parent must attend every field trip with their child. So no, they cannot require that a parent attend the field trip solely because a child has a disability. They have to provide the appropriate supports. This kind of ties into the we don't have the staff, or, if the child's one-on-one is not able to attend, sometimes they ask the parents. This one often comes up a lot too, unfortunately. So, no, the parent does not have to attend the field trip with their child. It's just not, that's just not something that you have to do. And also, they cannot say they can't come if you don't come, right? So they have to provide the supports that your child needs on a field trip. no matter what. So this, I see this come up a lot too with like, and small field trips, but big ones like Washington, D.C. A lot of districts do that at a certain grade, and a lot of times this comes up where they ask the parent to attend. So that is, or a lot of times the parents want to attend with them. So it could go both ways, but again, the district cannot require you to attend. Oh, okay. We are at the end. So it did leave a little bit of time for questions.
Thank you, Tammy. That was
Yes.
super engaging because I love a little quiz, a little true false quiz. So I appreciate you sharing all these myths and facts with us today. And we've got some thank yous coming in the chat as well. If anyone has any questions about any of the myths slash facts that Tammy covered or any other questions, you can feel free to drop them in the Q&A. Do any of our other panelists have any comments for Tammy or any other thoughts from her presentation?
I'm
I
sure they
think
do.
it was great, Tammy, because we get all those questions on a daily basis across the state. So
It
you
was
covered a
great.
great area of concern for most families.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh no, thank you, Amy. Yeah, Elaine, and it's very common. And I'll just share with you really, really quickly. I did tell you in the beginning that I'm a special education advocate. So what I do at Disability Rights Ohio is short-term assistance. So when it comes through, if something comes through our intake and it comes to me, I'm providing parents with short-term assistance. So I'm giving them next steps, resources, and we just recently collaborated because we had so much referral fatigue, is what we call it, where we were parents, I would say, okay, well, I'm only short-term assistant, so I can give you next up in resources. But they're like, oh my God, but I need continued advocacy. I need someone. So instead of the parents telling their story over and over and over again, we collaborated with OCECD to where we have now with the parents, we work with them, ask them to sign a consent form, and then we share all that information with the Ohio Coalition. I'm telling them what I've already told them. They also have access to technical assistance with our attorneys. So it is really giving parents, and because a lot of times, like Elaine just said, we're hearing the same things are coming, and I just feel like it is such a great service to families to have all these agencies connected, sharing the same things. And like I said in the beginning, not getting five different answers, right? Or five different ways to see something in perspective. So, Amy, were you going to share something? I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't, but I
Oh,
did see there were a couple of questions in the Q&A, so I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure that
yes, absolutely. There's some more thank yous, of course, Tammy. There were two questions. One of the questions is, can the school provide special education services daily instead of them going to a special school? I can
I need
answer.
clarification on that though. Uh, with what though? I guess my question is like, is there more to that?
That's all it is can the school provide special services daily instead of them going to a special school?
Well, yes.
It
Yeah.
depends on their needs, like if their needs are high enough to need that level of support,
Yeah.
then certainly it may warrant that, but no, just because a student, is on an IEP doesn't mean they have to go to a separate school.
Renee, if
Um,
I could just add something to that really
yeah,
quick.
yeah.
That is a big, also, again, I told you I could probably do, we could do maybe three or four of these trainings. But that's one that comes up too a lot is I believe my child needs a specialized school. And I really tell parents it takes a lot of documentation. And the school has to show that they cannot provide a free and appropriate public education. And it's not just because, I've heard, different things like, well, they're not equipped or they don't have, well, we have to look at that through the IEP, through the IEP team to determine that. But I just wanted to say that, Renee, regarding specialized schools.
Yeah, yeah. And this individual says that the IEP says OT once a week. And we definitely, like, if you have some specific questions relevant to your child, you are welcome to sign up for an individual guidance session and we can give you more guidance. But in general, I mean, if the only thing on the student's IEP is that they need OT once a week, then no, they probably don't need to go to a specialized school if they just need OT once a week. But again, if there's other, considerations that we'd have to take into account in terms of their least restrictive environment. And this person had also asked whether if a child can be taught individually in a classroom instead of with other children, if they have sensory or behavior issues. Yes, I've seen children taught on one-on-one scenarios, but it's not always, it's in very rare circumstances, I'll say. More, kids with very, very high needs that can be very aggressive and dangerous to other students. But again, this is more general information. Any parents are welcome to, on our website that I shared the link in the beginning. On our website, you can sign up for those individual guidance sessions. We are all on our summer breaks. I mean, we're still working, but we're all on our summer break from the special ed legal clinic for the next couple months, but we'll be back in the fall and you are welcome to sign up for an individual guidance session at that time. And we can, any of us will be there to help you answer any of those myth versus fact questions you might still have, or any more specific questions to your students. I was going to
Thanks,
say
Renee.
lots of thank yous
Aw,
in the Q&A again, like I said. And big thank you to Tammy. Thank you for finishing off our wonderful school year with this. Like I said, keep an eye out. I'm sure one or all, hopefully, all of our social medias will be posting once we have our new schedule for this next school year out. And we will see you in the fall. Thank you,
thanks,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you. Bye.